Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty fascinating real-world mystery, straight from a major Swiss-Nepalese research project. So here's the puzzle. Why on earth are technical graduates in Nepal struggling so hard to find jobs? It's a massively critical question. We're going to look at how technical vocational education and training, or as we'll call it, TVET, can actually boost youth income, especially in countries with huge informal economies. Okay, to solve this, we're taking a diagnostic approach. We'll quickly run through the employability gap, defining TVET, 4 types of training, the education-employment linkage, the curriculum value chain, and finally, solving the TVET puzzle. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The employability gap, diagnosing the problem. So imagine for a second you've just been hired as a TVET research consultant. Your mission? To figure out why a local polytechnic institute near a bustling industrial corridor is completely failing. I mean, enrollment is tanking, instructors are quitting left and right, and worst of all, graduates from civil, mechanical, and electrical diploma programs are still unemployed, a whole year after graduating. Local factory managers are incredibly frustrated. This quote perfectly captures the core symptom of our diagnostic mission, the visceral disconnect between holding a valid diploma and actually being employable. These students have the paper, right? But they completely lack the practical skills to operate modern machinery, and they really struggle to troubleshoot real-world technical problems. And honestly, the stakes are super high. Take a Kathmandu University exam scenario, for example. It brilliantly illustrates what we're up against. It challenges future education leaders to pinpoint the exact practical and operational deficits causing this gap. It forces us to ask, as a consultant, how do you actually bridge this massive divide between theoretical, textbook schooling and the dynamic, messy needs of the real labor market? Which brings us to Section 2, defining TVET and understanding the terminology. Now, as a consultant, you know education isn't just one big monolith. It's categorized by its structure and its outcomes. Let's break down the technical vocabulary, starting with formal education. This is your traditional path. You know, it's provided in institutions, it's highly structured with clear learning objectives and timeframes, and it's totally intentional from the learner's perspective. Most importantly, it ends with a formally recognized diploma, backed by a legal framework. This is pretty much exactly like the failing engineering programs we're analyzing. Next up, we have non-formal education. Now, this still has a planned curriculum and specific objectives, but, and here is the catch, it doesn't necessarily give you a formal degree that lets you climb the traditional academic ladder. Think of in-house professional development at your workplace, or maybe a specialized short-term boot camp. Finally, there's informal education. This is completely unstructured. It's that unintentional, everyday, accidental learning by doing that just happens through daily life, work, or hobbies. And actually, here's a really fascinating takeaway for your diagnostic report. Because TVET programs, by definition, require some sort of structure or delivery form, there is technically no such thing as a truly informal TVET program. Moving right along to Section 3, 4 types of training and how we classify these programs. So if there are no informal programs, how do we classify what actually happens out there, especially in places where the economy itself is largely unstructured? Well, we can use an asset mapping framework. Basically, we map education types against the actual labor market. Imagine a graph. On the horizontal axis, you have the education system, formal versus non-formal. And on the vertical axis, the employment system, formal versus informal. This gives us 4 distinct quadrants to categorize absolutely any TVET program in the world. The crucial thing here is how wildly different these categories look in practice. A highly structured program like the famous Swiss VET system, that sits in Category 1, formal education leading straight to formal employment. But look at Category 4. This is where initiatives like Nepal's SAMI project, which trains migrant workers, or the historic Kumile pottery training sit. These are vital, non-formal structures tailored completely for an informal labor market. And why does that 4th quadrant matter so much for your mission in Nepal? Well, get this. Over 60% of Nepal's economy is in the informal sector. Just let that sink in for a second. Over 60%. You literally cannot fix the skills mismatch in this country by only looking at formal factory jobs. Any viable TVET solution absolutely must account for this massive informal employment landscape. All right, Section 4, the education-employment linkage, bridging the gap. If we want to solve our polytechnics problem, we've got to bridge that gap between the classroom and the factory floor. The research is super clear on this. Optimal labor market outcomes happen when all the actors involved actually get a net benefit. When schools and local industries collaborate heavily, when they truly link their processes, graduates actually walk away with the skills the market desperately needs. It's all about balancing the interests of the education system with the employment system.
Let's compare the two extremes. If training is purely school-based, like our failing polytechnic, students graduate without ever touching the actual modern machinery used in local industries. Their skills exist in a total bubble. But Link TVET? That combines school and firm-based training. It ensures skills aren't too narrow or totally disconnected from reality. Firms get the specific skills they need right now, and students get broad enough knowledge to adapt in the future. Total win-win.
Section 5, the curriculum value chain, fixing the mismatch. So how do we actively build that link? We use a framework called the curriculum value chain. There are 3 distinct steps here to build a curriculum that translates into real jobs. Step 1 is design, deciding the standards and content. Step 2 is application, figuring out where and how the learning actually takes place. And step 3 is feedback, gathering data on outcomes to improve the whole system. Notice how this curriculum value chain is a continuous, cyclical loop. This is exactly how you fix a failing program. You have to bring company experts from both the formal and informal sectors right into the design phase to set the standards. Then, schools apply those standards through teaching and workplace training. And finally, the actual employment outcomes of the graduates are fed right back into the system to constantly update and modernize the curriculum. It is a living, breathing cycle. Bringing us to Section 6, solving the TVET puzzle and looking at the real TVET landscape. Now that we have our diagnostic tools and theoretical frameworks, let's see how this applies to the real world. Nepal is actually piloting some massive shifts right now. We're seeing traditional, formal certificates being challenged by exciting innovations like the Ensure program, which champions a 24-month workplace integrated apprenticeship. We're also seeing vital, non-formal training popping up in the booming tourism sector, alongside cultural training just to keep informal occupations alive. And that brings us full circle to our opening mystery, understanding the types of training, acknowledging the massive informal sector, and utilizing that curriculum value chain. These are your absolute keys to bridging the employability gap. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. If you were appointed principal of that failing polytechnic tomorrow, armed with everything we just discussed, how would you redesign your curriculum to guarantee your graduates actually get hired? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.